Hello,
Hey,
Graham.
hi, good to be with you again.
And welcome back, everyone, to Tea at 3. I'm Faye Schmidt, and this is Graham Care. So, last week, we after some digging, I think we had decided to ponder the little things in our life that fuel our joy in order for us to be more joyful for other people. I think you said at one point, I'm not sure if we ended up talking about this for very long. We said at one point, like being able to bounce like the joy off of us and back to other people. So like Nate, for me, that's like having plants in my house that I am like required to take care of, that being like, these are things that I have to do that I know will cause me joy, and be able to like trigger that back like out of a bad mood and like into a joyful place, and so that I can spread that on to other people. So that's what we've been thinking about this week.
Yes, I guess there is a piece of film of me bouncing the world. It's a large rubber ball, and bouncing the rubber ball on my backyard, and throwing it up in the air and letting it bounce again. And I was having such joy doing that, because that's what I love to see the world doing. I want to see the world bouncing back. At the moment, I see it deflated, and it just seems like the news comes on every day and pokes another pin into the inflation possibilities. And I don't like that. Now, I can throw that ball up in the air, but I can't do that to the world. There's nothing that I have about me anymore that I think that I can direct at the world and say, listen to me, world. See, if you do this, it'll be better. All I can do, and I've pondered this all week because I so loved what you said. You're important to me. I like to listen to you. I do. And you have these invisible plants of yours which didn't show up because of the green. I thought that was cute. But in that invisibility, there was something really special. You were going to water those plants in the same way that you nurtured your friendships. And it was just an inanimate object, but it had life in it, and it was going to grow. And I can understand that because I've got a plant here which is called an umbrella plant. What do they call it? It's a Schefflera. Is it? Okay. Schefflera. Okay. So, and I got it when it was 22 inches high. And I like the word number 22. So I saw it on the ticket that it was 22, and I thought, I'll take that. So it is now 4'6".
Wow.
And this is a picture of it so that you can enjoy that picture. It's big. It's right by my chair where I do my quiet time in the morning. It sits there. It's bigger than I am now. And I nurture that very carefully. And this morning, I was thinking to myself, yes, I see what she's saying. The world out there is unable for me to be able to properly change it. I can bounce off a little joy in my own life to my friend when I can get on the phone or get on a Zoom thing with them. And I have friends that I can do that too. But it's only 2 or 3 people. And the world is filled with, what, 7, 8 billion people? So how can I go from a little plant to the world out there? How can I make a difference? And this kind of sound really stupid, but hey, come on, there is a phrase which says humility is being known for who you are. And I think I should be locked up and medicated. So that's the kind of person I sometimes feel that I should be. So my daughter comes in with a cauliflower crust pizza. I don't know whether you've seen them, but they're now making pizzas with cauliflower instead of the normal flour crust. They make this flour crust with cauliflower. And she thought, I thought you might be interested. And I really was interested in that. So interested that I ripped the top off and put it in the oven and waited for it. And then I never went back to the carton to find out what the calories and what the carbohydrates were and all that sort of thing, which would normally interest me. We cut it in half and then in quarters. And I took a quarter of that. And that quarter was enough for me. I actually enjoyed the texture and everything else. But since the other quarter was just lying there, and she was into the second quarter on hers, I ate that too. Mm. Now, the next morning, I had put on 1 pound. Now, I'm not saying it was exclusively just the second piece, but the fact of the matter is that I did not need to have that second quarter, but it was there. And if I didn't eat it, then was it going to be thrown out? What would happen to it? Mm. And I think in the United States of America today, we have grown accustomed to consuming the other portion when we actually don't need the other portion. We're not even hungry enough for the other portion. And if we do eat it, we could be putting ourselves at some degree of eventual risk if all we do all the time is keep on eating the second portion. So for me, I couldn't do anything to the world, but I could look at that and say, you, Graham, could have not eaten the second quarter. And that's a start. And if I could feel better about myself, not prideful, but I made a wise choice for me, then there's a chance that there are wise choices that can be made by other people as well. And I got so excited about that possibility without needing, well, here am I. I'm telling you about it. So do you see what I mean? I'm joyful about that now as I describe it.
Yeah, I think I think for me, because I'm constantly thinking about ways to make other people happy, I often like pass over my own happiness or like needs. And so like prioritizing, or not really prioritizing, but like making, like not putting it out of the picture, like the things that keep you healthy and motivated and joyful and things like that. Like, I mean, consuming less can be good for you, and it also is good for the world. And so like you feel good not only about your health, but about like taking less from the community pool or what have you. So like that fuels your joy in order to like continue to do something like that, to consume less and
yes, yeah,
and move on in the world. I was thinking just yesterday, actually, we were making roasted cauliflower, not cauliflower pizza crust or anything like that, but we were making roasted cauliflower. And my housemate asks me like, can you eat the cauliflower leaves? And I was like, oh no, I usually just take them off. And then I was like, wait, I mean, you probably can. Like there are so many things that we can eat. Like okay, so my background is this last weekend. I think it was about right after our recording, I turned to my housemates, who are also my friends, and I was like, let's go to Glacier, because it's like only 2 hours away from here, Glacier National Park.
Yes.
And then we just went to Glacier last weekend, and it was great. We just went, we camped out near there Friday night because all the campsites inside are closed. And then we drove in through the park and we pulled over and stopped at different places and we did a little hikes, and then like stayed there all day and then drove home that night. And while I was hiking around, one of the really big things in Montana is huckleberries. And so I'm like always have my eyes out for huckleberries, but there weren't a lot left. And my husband said like there's another kind of berry called service berries that you can also eat, but nobody does because they just don't know about it. And that was another one of those things where I'm just like, there are so many things that the earth is giving us that we just like are so used to the like prepackaged TV dinner, whatever, like the things that we can buy at the store when there's so many more things. This isn't like a point to like bring up to ponder, but it was just something that I was thinking about that was
Yes, no, I like it.
like,
I like it. Yeah.
There's so much more out of the earth that we can participate in, I guess.
Yeah. And
but that was
find joy in
that trip. Yeah,
yes.
that trip also, I was going to say, gorgeous, definitely a source of joy, huge source of joy.
Yeah.
Also, not just because it was beautiful, but because it was a trip with my friends.
So I'm very familiar with the whole area, and it is lovely. I agree.
So,
as it is here as well, you know, because I can look down onto Puget Sound from here, and surrounded by all these beautiful trees. And this morning, in my quiet time, I looked outside, and I have a new basil plant. So not only can I nurture it, but it can nurture me.
That's great.
And I looked out, and there was a heavy dew this morning, with the difference in temperature, etc. And there were teardrops on the end of every one of these basil plants. Well, I know they were dewdrops, but I saw them as tears. And I saw them as tears of joy, because I have cried with joy, and I've cried with just self-pity. But the tears of joy for me are marvelous. And I looked at this teardrop this morning, and I thought, I'm going to be talking to Faith today. I'm going to take a photograph of this now, because it was so clear and aromatic, I would imagine, having been dew onto a leaf which rolled down enough to form a perfect teardrop at the end. And it was such a joy to be able to see that. And I think it's what you're telling me. We have it really on our doorstep. If we have eyes to see it and ears to hear it, we can move into something that is creatively filled with joy, almost designed just for you and me, just to see that and to love it. And I think in that loving, you know, that scripture which says to love your neighbor as yourself. So if yourself is always listening to the news and the latest negative things that are being said, then it's hard to love your neighbor when you're so preoccupied with doom. But if you look out through the window and you see the dewdrop and you start to celebrate, you just want to share it with the world, you know. So I'm glad we were able to see and share that together. So on that basis, a quick thing. I got this letter yesterday from Manchester, England. It's
nice.
dated Manchester, and it's addressed to me. And I opened it up, and it had a little card in it, which is this card here. It was a very personal thing this person said to me, and I'm not going to share that because I think it's just between that person and me. But may I just say to you, if you happen to have said this, thank you. It means a lot to me, and I'm going to keep it close to my heart. Okay. Do you know there's some things you prize in life, and a teardrop on the end of a basil leaf and a little card that comes from England, and that they happen within 24 hours of each other, says that the whole world is filled with lovely things if we just recognize them and rejoice in them when we get them. Yeah. So
yeah, when we were hiking in Glacier, I've often thought, like, I've told you about my tattoo that says joy, which to me is like a reminder to be joyful. But I've often thought about getting another. I like tattoos that are reminders to myself, because then they don't come from anyone else. They're just from me. And so I can't be like, don't tell me what to do, because it's from myself. Okay. Anyway, moving on from that. I've always thought of like having one that just says like, look up, especially when hiking, because like you're like staring at the rocks, like trying not to trip. And yes, it's important, like don't trip on your face, but also just like every so often I would just like be so focused in on the rocks, and then I would stop and look up, and it would be something like this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like you're just like shocked at how gorgeous everything is around you. So it's just like having those reminders to look at the beautiful and like take the beautiful things of the world in.
Yes. Good. Well, I'm going to keep doing this because there is so much beauty around that I just need to see that, and I need to see it in my fellow human beings as well, rather than look critically around me all the time, to look lovingly around me and see people that I can value, like you. Yeah. So we're going to ponder something for the week that stretches out before us, and it's my turn this
Yes,
time.
sir.
You had a turn last time. My turn. Well, I've changed pictures around. Well, this is a picture of a boat that I had once.
That's your boat, the
And
one that you sailed
a
around on?
sailboat, yes. And
Okay.
when the spinnaker was up and all the downwind sails, it had 3,800 square feet of downwind sails. Very colorful. We were hit by a vegetable truck during the Galloping Gourmet series, and I was partially paralyzed down my left side. I could walk about 20 paces, but I couldn't stand up for more than about 10 minutes. And this wonderful doctor said, what you need to do, he was a Scot, what you need to do is buy yourself a boat and pull some lines and catch your balance, and I think you'll be fine. And I just love the guy for that. You know, it's not the average doctor that tells you to go and buy a boat.
Yeah.
But with the insurance settlement, because it was a rather large settlement, we were able to build a 71-foot ocean racing ketch and sailed 24,000 miles in that thing as a whole family. And that's an expensive boat, and it's cost about $80,000 a year to be able to run that boat, you know, as it was sailing. And it was a great adventure. And I can look back upon looking at that boat with pride. It's mine, and I own it. Until it became clear to me that it was mine, but it owned me. Because unless you're on something like that in a consistent basis, using it like we did for 24 months and getting well because of that, and getting to know my kids because of that, and all of those things, all of that has worked together for good. But the moment we got off that boat, it sat at the end of the dock costing $80,000 a year. So my thing from this one is, but I'm putting it out there to remind me of the fact that nowadays I can be just as joyful looking at a teardrop on the end of a piece of basil, right? I can be filled with a sense of joy and a sense of, I don't know, communion with creation itself that I actually never felt with the boat. It was a large, expensive thing. And so there's a world out there that loves large, expensive things and is talked into them all the time. But that's not me anymore. And I don't have to get upset about them wanting to have large, expensive things. The fact is, I am so absolutely thrilled that I can be thrilled with a teardrop on the end of a leaf of basil. I am so pleased about that. I feel I'm off the hook. Here's the thing. I want to look around me for all the little things that I am so content with now. And even ask myself the question, is there something that I could do a little less of? So that there's a little bit more of me in terms of time or interest, something where I could make more of a contribution if I was less focused upon myself. That's all I'm going. And it's tiny. I don't want us to start thinking of it's just a quarter of a piece of pizza that I wouldn't have, that I could somehow be more available to other people in my life. And I'm not sure that, like most of these things we explore, they're not so easy to put into words, are they? Really. But
Yeah.
I think you know what I'm trying to say. I want to celebrate having less of me and being less concerned about me, and being more of a celebration that there's a better day out there for me and for everybody else as well. I think it's going to get better, a lot better. And I'm really excited about that. So that's what I'm going to try to ponder about all week. Just that simple. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So finding ways to take a smaller piece of the pizza, of the community pizza,
Yes.
in
Yeah.
ways that are good for you and good for the world.
Yes. Yes. And see the world through that tiny choice. Make a little tiny choice about something during the week, and see it as if it multiplied over the whole world. Would the place look better? That's a good idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm thinking the first idea that came to my head with this was like, if I need to go somewhere that's not all that far away. Luckily, okay, so growing up, I've lived in cities that are quite hilly. Like Seattle is very hilly, and Spokane, I lived on a hill, so I didn't really like biking anywhere. But in Missoula, it's actually really, really flat. Well, in the actual city part, it's very mountainous all around, but Missoula's in a valley.
Yeah.
So something like, if I need to go to the store, maybe instead of taking a car, or I actually have a moped, but instead of taking my moped, I could take a bike, and that's like using less of the fuel and like putting less of the pollutants from that engine and everything into the world. And but like, even though that's like a tiny needle in a haystack impact in like the world, but if we take things like if like that small and fuel ourselves with like the joy of doing something like that, I mean, if I can manage to like make that feeling addictive, then maybe I'll be doing like more and more and more and more like good little good things in the world, and those add up.
And every time you do it, it is a little contribution. And I think if we can rejoice over the tiniest personal contribution, there's a good chance that we can feel better about that ourselves, knowing that we're making something. We are a tiny bit of difference. Multiply that. Hey, and there's hope for mankind. Yes. Good. Okay. I'm in.
All right. So this week we'll be thinking about ways in which we can take a smaller piece of the pizza in ways that are good for us and good for the world, and multiplying that joy and fueling ourselves into doing more and more little like contributions like that, in hope for a better future and resilient community and all that.
Gotcha.
So that's what we will be thinking about this week. This has been Tea at 3. I'm Faith Schmidt. This is Graham Kerr, and we'll see you next week. Oh, and I will say one more little drop in my pool of joy this week was actually reading some comments that we got. A couple people commented saying that what we were talking about is like that they really related to it and it was helpful to them. And so like
Good.
The fact that I like one other person in the world is at all like a little happier from this experience, that's enough for me. That's amazing. Like, please keep commenting, keep like sharing your feedback with us, even if it's not always positive. We like to hear like what you guys have to say and keep you guys in mind. So please comment, and if you enjoyed watching the video, also like and please subscribe if you're not already as well.
And if I can add to this, remember, you see, you sent me a card, and I'm really touched. I really am.